Another monster TV battle, 8K Samsung versus 8K LG. The 85-inch Q900B versus the 88-inch LG Z2.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
What's up, guys? I am Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's comparison is such an interesting one as we go with the 8K flagships of both Samsung and LG with the 85-inch Q900B versus the 88-inch LG Z2. The comparisons are incredible as they are in a bright room and a dark room. You see the reflection handling, high peak brightness, and higher color gamut, wider color gamut of the Samsung Q900B Mini LED, the higher contrast ratio, picture quality, better blacks, and perhaps better specular highlights on the OLED LG Z2. Again, both 8K. Special thanks to Robert and Wendy Zahn of Value Electronics for allowing us to film in their location for supplying both the Q900B and LG Z2. Please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Check the description below for all their information. Let them know that Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy sent you. I hope you guys enjoyed the comparison. We'll talk. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments. And most importantly, as we go through this comparison, really think to yourself, which one would you prefer? All right, guys, here is the setup. Q900B is on the left at 85 inches. It's on its stand. The Z2 at 88 inches is 2 feet back on the wall, which is why it looks smaller throughout this comparison as we look over and see the guys hanging the 97-inch G2. We're also in a very bright room, the gallery of Value Electronics. The blinds are open. For the first half of this video, it also gets much more dark and the blinds are closed for the second half. As we move into the first demo, the reflection handling of the Q900B is evident. It has the coating which diffuses and blurs the image in comparison to the mirror-like glossy screen of the Z2. Keep in mind when these panels are off, the Z2 looks much more high-end with the clean reflections versus the diffused, blurry look of Samsung. Not important to many of you, but something to keep in mind is some people don't love the way it looks when it's off. The wider color gamut and higher peak brightness of the Samsung shows itself a lot through this comparison. It does look more colorful and more vibrant. Though it looks like it clips here, a lot of that is due to the camera. However, there are times where it does wash the image out, where the contrast ratio of the Z2 knocks it down. Both have amazing detail. They are both 8K. Let me know what you also think in the comments about the whole 8K and Europe dilemma that we're looking at. We are looking at 4K upscale. They both do an amazing job of upscaling 4K. There is no noise to be found. Both panels are extremely clean. They'll be set up in very similar presets. Again, they are different manufacturers. We'll be in filmmaker mode for both, cinema, and then vivid at the very end. You can see where the reflection handling absolutely looks tremendous on the Samsung. There's times where I don't love it. But as we move into the end of this demo, the richness of both images is staggering for different reasons. But they both look phenomenal. Moving into SDR, here's times here where you will see that the Samsung does appear brighter, more saturated. The green is equally as green at times on the Z2. It's not really Samsung being Samsung. The question you should have is contrast ratio within the fur, especially in this next shot. Do you lose detail on the Samsung? It retains detail. There's more detail in the foreground and background, but loses it here in the background for the Z2. Shots like this, the Z2 looks dim in comparison. That happens several times where you would expect it to. But as we move into the end of this comparison, there is a fatal flaw that does affect all Samsung mini LEDs, even at this highest end. Here, the Z2 looks a good deal dimmer, nowhere near as bright. Here as well. As you move into this part here where there is a beat in the ground, even with the black level, you can see the Samsung's peak brightness start to diminish to battle blooming. As the champagne bottle shows up, watch how dim the Samsung gets. Now, the blooming control is off the charts, very good. However, there is a price. The Z2 looks much brighter here versus the 900B. It flattens out the blacks to keep blooming from happening, unlike Sony, which retains shadow detail but does suffer from blooming. Samsung goes this route. I'm not sure which I prefer. I do detest the blooming. However, not only does it dull the image, it almost grays it out. It's a choice Samsung has made in the last number of years. Doesn't show up much in this kind of comparison where there is larger items on screen, but when the screen items are smaller, you do lose that specular highlight, which sounds counterintuitive considering how bright the Samsung is. Again, in scenes like this, the blooming control is fantastic. The 900B still looks brighter, though the Z2 looks much deeper. You'll see some space shots later where this does show up again, and for many of you will be a deal breaker. However, there are times where the Z2 doesn't look nearly as bright, which might be a deal breaker for you guys as well. Some of you just find that OLEDs, regardless of how bright, even QD-OLEDs are not bright enough. That is not right. That is not wrong. That is merely preference of what you guys see. You can see here that Samsung handles the reflections and the blooming amazingly, but then keep in mind we are in a brighter room. And even here with these bottles, it doesn't do that diffuse blacks where it gets dim or anything, though the Z2 at times looks equally as bright in comparisons such as this. Now guys, think specular highlights isn't explosions. We're talking about stars. Now watch the color difference here as we move into this next demo, and then watch the sunflower, how much dimmer it is on the Z2. Boom. That's what many of you will see. Now, as we move back into different demo material, it does switch the other way. The Z2 is much more detailed. And where the black level lives is not just on the delineation of a shape, but then again, here, look how much dimmer it looks. Think of black level within material, hair, clothing. There's more depth in the flame, but here for HDR impact, look how bright the Samsung is. But it's more full screen HDR impact. Here, think explosions. Now, while it looks like you're losing detail on the Samsung, it is clipping a bit, though it does blow it out quite a bit. Now, this is where the main difference lies. The Z2, all the stars are visible. I'll pause it for this comparison. I'll also zoom in so you can see the difference. I'll circle back to this scene as well. Letting this run, they almost look like they're exactly the same here. Bit brighter whites, true whites on LEDs, where OLEDs in comparison, regardless of how bright they are, you'll still never feel that it's true white. Excellent demo material again from our good friend Jennifer Gala and the HDR Super channel. Check out her channel, like it, subscribe. She has exquisite work. You can see we're getting darker outside. Here, stars are much more visible, though this isn't the comparison that's going to make your jaw drop. I remember in the past that OLED struggled with specular highlights in stars simply because it crushed them. We're going to go in and check the settings here to make sure we're kind of close with each one. Also show you which panels we are using. And I love how the Z2 is just there. It's not dimming even though it's paused. You don't see it losing brightness at all. Now, forgive me for the speakers and stuff in the way. These are massive TVs, and it's hard to fit them in. Now, here, again, you're seeing more reflections on the Samsung as the sun is going down. But on the right side of the screen where you see the gold yellow, you can see how much more pronounced it is on the Z2. This is where your nighttime darkroom performance isn't even close. Now, in a scene like this, the 900B would still be fine in a dark room when it's not next to an OLED. But when we do move into the stars, that would be noticeable if it was alone. We go back in here to the vibrancy of the 900B as the black level dissipates. So the trade-off will always be for you watching is what kind of content do you watch? Large, colorful, full screen will always look better on the 900B. Specular highlights, even sparks like this, I would argue that even the Z2 does look brighter. Though they both look great here, again, that's larger sparks versus small, minute details. Think jewelry, think stars. Pausing it here. Again, taking a look at the settings. This is where the reflection handling is obviously evident on the 900B, but if you can see in the Z2, there is a bit more detail, and the black level lives in between the sparks. Now, both these panels are absolutely gorgeous. I'm actually leaning towards the 900B for my next panel, as there are limitations on OLEDs. Now, moving back into that initial planet and stars, we are going to pause it here and take a closer look. They are completely gone on the 900B. Again, we are farther away, but we will move forward here to show you the true difference. Now, you can see how distinct they are here. I'll block the reflection with my body, and they're basically gone. Now, if I told you that the Z2 was the QD mini LED, you'd think that was, I switched them. But look how bright and distinct the light control there. Now, this wouldn't matter if it was in a completely dark room, but you can see there was a bit blooming there. It is a complex scene. But as you move into the stars, you'll find a cluster here, which is so vibrant. The planets and the cluster there at the bottom. Moving back over to the 900B. Hard to find the stars. As you move in here, you can see the brightness of both. Now, it handles much better here. It doesn't dim here on this side, simply because there is a bright object in the middle of the screen versus these small speculars. But if you look and you can see how vibrant the 900B is when there's more bright on the screen versus small specular highlights. So here's the cluster on the Z2. And then there's the cluster on the 900B. Now, there's only in a few instances where this happens, but it is a huge difference that you have to be aware of when you're chasing higher peak brightness. We always think peak brightness, I want it to be useful. Now, as we move over to this next demo, look how much brighter the 900B is. So keep in mind, full field, what is more important to you? Look how much brighter the 900B is here. It makes the Z2 look like it's almost off. So it goes back into the LEDs versus plasma thing. You know, there are times where they trade shots and the peak brightness of the Samsung makes you say, wow. There's times with Samsung's technology makes you say, ugh. But again, what content do you watch? If you're a big sports person and you watch a lot of bright content, Samsung, no question. Now, I'd feel the same way if you take the prices away. For me, the challenge with OLEDs, and I see that on my own C1, is banding in that 12 to 15% gray. Makes me crazy. However, on LEDs, you end up with jail bars in between zones anyway. So there's always that trade-off. I mean, they both look incredible. But that compromise, and I'll go back to, they say, the Z9K from Sony, those stars are evident and they're very bright. So the Z9K would always look brighter than the Z2. However, the detail would be lost in terms of blooming. Those clusters would be very hard to handle for the Z2. Beautiful. And then here, so you can see where they really do trade shots. Here again, specular highlights are stronger on the 900B, except for right there. Now the Z2 looks brighter. So again, limitations of technology. Can QD-OLED bridge that gap? Not to this degree, though they would be brighter. You still would have the limitations of OLED versus a mini LED. You can put a mini LED against the QD-OLED and have similar results. They won't be as bright as a QD-OLED, QD mini LED, I should say. Can it be as bright? Especially Samsung changing. The flames look phenomenal on, but see, the flames look great here. You can see how much brighter the 900B is. So it really is a trade-off. I'm repeating this demo when it's a bit darker, and look at the detail on both, but look how much brighter the 900B is here. So I love the trading back and forth, but to say one is much better than the other is really a challenge. That's with price completely out of it. I don't ever want to see mini LEDs disappear or micro LED. But that trade-off of that dark room, specular highlights, you know, and that scene with the crown getting much darker, very hard to deal with that. Now back with Jennifer's content, look how amazing that looks. And when you look at HDR impact and saturation and color, as you see here, the Samsung loses a bit of detail, but that's more the camera. But look at how beautiful they are and the differences in color, though they're set very similarly in color. Now, where I love with Samsung versus LG, you can see the detail come back a bit, is Samsung can hang gaming-wise with LG. There goes that strength. Other than Dolby Vision gaming, the Samsung has actually more gaming features other than that one change. I want to go back and game on the 900B. They do still disable local dimming, but you can add it back a bit in terms of its black level. But a lot of the games are darker grayish screens. And again, as we transform back into a bluer screen, the strength comes back to the 900B, looking a great deal more bright. Almost looks dim on the Z2. Let me know what you guys prefer, as we're now pretty much in a dark room. This is where you're going to start seeing the detail on the Z2 excel. But look at the saturation and brightness of the Samsung. So it is a very tough comparison. I like comparing different technologies more than just OLEDs. They both look fantastic. So other than that dark star demo, I would have a hard time picking between the two, because I do love the specular highlights of the Samsung. I do love that. Now again, screen uniformity is phenomenal on both these. They are the highest end. And again, if you look here at HDR impact, amazing. For our last demo, we'll move into Vivid on both to show you how much brighter the 900B is, though the Z2 handles this as well, pretty beautifully as well. You can see the true white of the Samsung. All right, guys, let me know what you think. What do you think of this comparison? I know they're very expensive. What do you think of 8K, as some of these dilemmas do show up? Have you gotten a 4090 GPU where you may be able to take advantage of 8K? QNED will be a video we'll be doing soon as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think of these two monsters trading punches back and forth? Who do you think has the edge Where would this be in your house if you could put it there? Which trade-off do you prefer? More color, brighter, but maybe losing the specular highlights? Is that more important to you? Let me know. It's such an interesting argument as neither is perfect, though they both are phenomenal. Amazing. All right, guys, have a great day. Love you guys. Take care.